Hey, my name is Ice, and before we begin, let me explain what my journey is. Put simply, my journey is an episodic series that blends a let's play with my style of writing and presentation. In a way, I want this series to enable you to live vicariously through my words, if you've played the title game or haven't. With that said, this will have a ton of spoilers. Now, let's begin my journey into
Sekiro.
Episode 1, The One-Fanged Wolf. War never changes. Feuds that embroil whole countries, claiming thousands. Yet, under a golden sky, we're treated to those two that decide its fate, ending surely as they've all ended, a winner and a loser. The fruits of this labor was that stretch of land that this sun would touch, destitute and smoldering. In its aftermath, a hand reaches to a blade, a bond written in blood. This tinged decree, a code bound by iron and steel, becomes our creed, our way of life. Obey. Defend the air at any cost. Time has a funny way of slipping away from us, despite it always being there, through depression, expectation, or occupation. Though you think you've discarded what you lived for, it only takes but one ember to spark a flame. We awaken. Naturally, let's get a feel for who we are. Sekiro is not quite like Dark Souls, where we play as anyone we want. Now, we're someone specific. Wolf. A name bestowed upon us by the man who handed us his blade. Owl. Becoming a sort of adoptive father, who mercilessly trained Wolf into becoming the divine heir's shinobi, the sole inheritor of dragon blood. A conduit that grants immortality to those deemed worthy. This gift, which some see as a curse, is the most coveted power in this new world. One which can sway wars, capable of shifting the balance of power with only one man. Wolf was bestowed this power, gaining the trust of the heir. He is sworn by the Iron Code indoctrinated from his father, and likewise sworn by this eternal life. This tutorial is meant to signify something deceptively important to Sekiro's actual story. We know how to fight just as well as Wolf does at this point. He'd secluded himself to this well for some years, dull and out of practice, even discarding his weapon. Thus, we first have to remember what being a shinobi entails, reaching our target by any means, through stealth and rock climbing. This leads us to the divine heir, kept prisoner in the small pagoda. After a short conversation, we're gifted a katana, named Kusabimaru. This leads directly into my first observation, the sound design. This will be a recurring motif. I love music and the sounds in between. An extremely important facet that fleshes out not only the atmosphere of a game, but helps build an identity. Think of the most iconic sound effects like even without being shown where those sounds came from, you can easily picture them yourself. Sekiro's identity is very much founded on sound, and I'll discuss that a bit more in depth later, but for now, enjoy these pretty clangs and let's move on. As the tutorial winds down, we're thrown an obstacle course as a way to finish reinforcing movement mechanics, before we fall upon a door and blow a whistle to begin the heir's great escape, through a small cave which opens into a beautiful field of white illuminated brilliantly by a full moon. But at its center stood a mysterious figure, as if separated from this light, a blot of darkness. Introduced as Genichiro, in a husky voice, he takes his stance. Also, before the fight begins, check out this animation. Wolf readies his thumb, gets ready to flick his blade out, but watch his body. His eyes straight ahead as his hand falls flat against the handle, finding where to grip it, as if he were uncertain. Then, look at Genichiro. Identically caught in a death stare, he reaches confidently to his blade and grasps it all in one fluid motion. I didn't get to appreciate the subtlety of this cutscene until rewatching because, think about it, this early on, a boss fight. Obviously, Fromsoft has set up encounters where you're supposed to lose and it's extremely evident, but I just kicked this guy's ass, so why would they wait till the second boss? Am I really expected to win? These thoughts running through my head, and as I occupied myself with how difficult this fight is about to be, Wolf himself was showing signs of not being ready too. Cutscenes like this do not get half as much credit as they deserve. Show me the artistry, the flair, the direction. I have yet to play Metal Gear Solid at all, any installment, but I know 3's got a bucket of swag on its own. And this one shot of Snake flicking his cigar away is so needlessly epic. But it accomplishes something beyond just flicking the cigar. Snake is badass. And noticing this now tells me Wolf was badass. Was. We fought and clanged, but the clangs were just that, clangs. I told you the sound is special. Don't forget that. I paced around the arena and had no idea how to approach this. I needed to learn. And before that thought could even finish registering, Genichiro elbowed me in the eye, then ruptured my goddamn intestines. What? What boiled in me? My blood. Burning, seething anger. It's not that I failed Kuro. I hadn't cared for the kid yet. It was his back, turned to me, talking down as we lay slumped over, bloodying this beautiful field, helpless and weak, not even strong enough to be killed. You will die, Genichiro, 1,000-fold. Again, we awaken. Born to an artificial arm and an outrageously hairy old man, this game was setting a weird precedent. I wandered around the hub talking to the NPCs before finally heading along my way and seeing Ashina. Snow falling as the morning sun painted the clouds orange and gold, a tapestry that inspired the sense of something new. Sekiro is deeply seated in a very holistic approach to Japanese art. We can understand the locale through the architecture of this landscape, contrasted by a sort of mystical, over-the-top design to everything else that otherwise be natural. I'd wager this style is most heavily attributed to the ukiyo-e school of design, where it was the works of nature that take precedent over the makings of man. These twisting trees leading us along towards grotesque inhabitants and gorgeous backdrops, while the structures were all seated firmly and quietly in between. Trudging along, I fell upon my first mini-boss, a general that was simply begging to be stabbed in the back. I mean, look at this dum-dum, he might as well have bent over. And now for an important message. Seriously, perilous attacks are important, and this facet is establishing something any action enjoyer should immediately appreciate. There's different methods to handle each encounter, incorporating parrying, dodging, and vertical movement as well. Of course, early on this isn't going to make sense because Wolf is out of practice. He doesn't possess the proper tools nor the experience to fully fight back, and as the player, this much is true too. In a game like Witcher 3, you may never, ever feel compelled to roll or counterattack because the game lets you get away with just dodging and sprinting. While keeping it simple is cool and it works for Witcher because the game doesn't revolve around combat, Fromsoft has a different expectation. One to deliver thought-evoking melees that force reactions out of your primal brain, so when you win a tough battle, you lose all sense of reasoning and let out a shout, a scream, or maybe just a deep sigh. The question becomes, how do they take that and put it somewhere new? These different systems end up fleshing out a whole that you can only deliver step by step. And that step-by-step process is really important and can't be understated because, let me tell you, I came into Sekiro expecting Dark Souls and it's not what I got. I got my ass kicked. I got beaten down senselessly. But this early going was easy enough. Let's save the rage for a second. The next thing I had to grasp was posture. In Sekiro, health doesn't matter, except for 2 or 3 bosses. Whittling it down didn't make sense to me because I was being consistently deflected. It felt like my strikes had no weight, and I wasn't finding an opening. Unfortunately for Fromsoft, I'm a pro gamer with heaps of patience behind me, and I was content walking this fight out. After a string of deflects, the general fell to his knees, and I delivered a death blow. That felt good. Brazenly, I fell upon a camp and tried taking them all, and a harsh question loomed over me. How do I do this? The power of a crowd is incredible, even when you think of a medieval knight fully clad in plate armor. One-on-one they may be unstoppable, but grab a pack of miscreants and give them a brick, then you may think otherwise. Likewise, a shinobi with just a blade wouldn't battle even 2 foot soldiers at once. As the situation escalated into unbridled chaos, I panicked and ran, and found an old lady that handed me a bell. An old lady who mistook me for her son, Inosuke, a fatally wounded man right outside her house. Suffering a wound that's limited his legs, he sits outside incapable of seeing his mother one last time, or even making his presence known for the sake of not worrying her. This too is a fruit of war. We fight all the same, with the cruel reality of it bleeding before us. A fractured family, a sundered home, and wild giant roosters in the basement. It's a lot to take in, and from a developer normally known for hopelessness and the inevitability of mortality, I just couldn't help wanting to fulfill her wish. I returned back to the temple and prayed to the Buddha, falling into buried memories from 3 years ago. Screeching violins cried out as I approached the lip of this overlook, facing a burning village. As the strings adjusted, a tragic tune began to form, and small crumbs were laid before me. This man, yet another bystander caught by death, shares information and urgency about the divine heir. In imminent danger by way of bandits, I knew then it'd be by my blade this battle would end. Holy Christ, this game is not making it easy to look cool. Slowly but surely, I fought tooth and nail through the last of these foes, talking to some NPCs and picking up information before moving on. Then these 2 shield guys absolutely pulverized my confidence. I beat them, but so desperately it didn't feel like a win. I figured I missed something along the way and returned to present day, finding myself in front of a staircase, with a pained shout and clanging chains perking my ears. Obviously, this is some bullshit. So I gunned it for the hole in the bridge above this commotion, only for a fog wall to slowly appear. What did I get myself into? Pause right here. Is this a white dude? We sparred for a while, finding myself helplessly running in circles as he... My adrenaline soaring through the roof as I tried to rein in my reactions, coupled with a low amount of heals and a general sense of not knowing what the hell is going on. I seriously hated this dude, and have nothing nice to say about him, other than the death blow is rad as hell. Thank God this hulking mass became a corpse, and finally, my way forward was clear. And another one. My disappointment knew no bounds. This was about the time where a switch flipped in me. I began to loathe this game. Unavoidably thinking back to Dark Souls 3, how awesome the beginning was. Udex Gundyr as an intro, followed by Vort as an overture. No nonsense mini-bosses or what seemed like them in between, just straight up decadent gameplay with 2 early foes geared to teach you the fundamentals. Did I misunderstand something along the way? I couldn't have. I remember so much. Begrudgingly, I went back to Hirata and tried my hand at the Shinobi Hunter, and immediately bounced back to the General. Nothing was working. Nothing was clicking. Thoughts began swirling. Did Fromsoft fail me? Is this a bad game? Why is this so hard but seemingly so basic? Who thought of this? But I didn't raise the most important question. Am I the problem? It began feeling as if something was missing, but whatever it was, it hadn't made itself known yet. In Dark Souls, you're provided unbridled freedom. The game doesn't tell you how to win, it expects you to find out. In stark contrast to it, Sekiro is loaded with these pop-up tutorials explaining new mechanics, when you're meant to use them and how. There was an expectation that if I was doing something wrong, it'd tell me. Finding myself facing this general again, I picked off each enemy before engaging the big boss. Deflecting stabs, not really understanding where to jump, and in general facing extreme adrenaline, but I won. Despite my struggles, I won. Am I finally understanding? It didn't feel like it. But before I could reflect, my legs had moved themselves into a valley, where I was greeted by a low rumble. Caution overtook me as I approached each ledge slowly. I came into this game knowing 2 truths. 1, this game is linear, and 2, Fromsoft wouldn't waste space without trying to blast my ass. My heart leapt into my throat. I stood there, awestruck, as this massive serpent peered into tall grass and swayed its head searching for an intruder. Tension rose as this set piece sought me out. It pushed me through corners, not letting me relax and observe it peacefully. I'm just prey, just like how he saw me, like every fight's made me feel. I'm still no one. I snuck closer, the hiss of this beast echoing through the valley. Considering its magnitude, I thought initially you just run. I was wrong. Instead, meant to enter this palanquin, assuming it were a waiting game and we watched the snake slither away. But as second after second ticked away, I choked my anxious breath, and its eye began to peer through this tattered fabric. Coated in blood, I made my panic dash to safety and completely messed up, the screen shaking violently as its massive body whipped downwards, crunching my bones against solid stone. Dead again. Third time's the charm. Finally, finding myself on walkable ground, I carelessly jumped into a battlefield chasing the golden glint of an item. In the distance, a powerful voice bellowed.
ONIWA GYOBU MASATAKA nari.
Without a moment of hesitation, this warrior bore down on me, dropping a spear like a hammer, its crushing force colliding with my blade, generating sparks that fool you into thinking they were explosions. Throughout this fight, one thing was evident. I lacked the poise to compete. Thundering hooves and these intimidating wind-ups forced me into a figurative corner, passive play consuming me again as I contented myself to walking this fight out. As his posture neared its breaking point, I waited for my opportunity. Given a lucky break, Wolf leapt up, impaling the spearman through his spinal cord, causing a stream of blood to pour out, only for the fight to continue. We'd only just begun. Diving again into the fray, ONIWA seemed to have a second wind, jumping into slams, kicking up more dirt as if to obscure my vision. But, above all, it wore me out. I correctly assumed this was the first legit boss of the game, and what a foe he was. Imposing, dominant, and above all, energetic. A sort of battery. There was just no stopping, no moments of reprise, no rust to shake off. For all the praise I'll forever throw to Dark Souls 3, a reason I find it so satisfying was that every boss never asked for too much. They always asked for just the right amount of effort. But this was a foe hungry for blood, ready for war, a mentality I couldn't comprehend, one I couldn't match. Not this try, at least. Though failure was still among my horizon, I was still forming, being sharpened by this vicious onslaught, still stuck in the process. It wasn't without its epic moments, such as ONIWA shooting off taunts, and this one attempt where he just entirely ran through an archer's tower. Yet for some reason, despite feeling like I was learning, combat felt like such a chippy affair. Resigning myself to defensive style, coming to an understanding that parrying will solve all my problems and openings will naturally form around it. They did come, but few and far between, effectively neutralizing the impact those windows had, and leading me to feel something I'll probably end up saying more than once. Exhaustion. Not only in the fight, but in the game itself. I was exhausted, trying to master the timings, while frantically running around this arena, giving chase to ONIWA as his horse trampled me, as his spear cleaved me, as every failed clang, knockdown, and jeer slowly pushed me deeper and deeper into a sea of contempt. Why does it have to be this way? Seeing this pain too soon, drowning in its ache. But my expiration date wouldn't be today. It was on my 6th attempt, my meter defense finally matched my building fury, launching a blinding flurry of slashes and deflections, taking only one hit until I delivered the first plunge to his neck, proclaiming to myself I wouldn't be yet another corpse on this battlefield. He would. I found myself back at the dilapidated temple, speaking to the old man. He'd claimed my battle sense had returned before passing me an esoteric text, a book that enables the acquisition of skills. And this is when the game began to open up. 4 bosses later, about 3.5 hours into this ordeal. Finally. Before I completely left the old man's side, he also mentioned a prosthetic tool. My arm's a weapon now. I acquired both the flame vent and some shurikens on top of a new ability, the Mikiri counter. Returning now to Hirata Estate with a newfound fire under my ass, the flame of discovery. Sparking my foes ablaze, doing a little fishing, and chopping planks in half, I had my fated reunion with the shinobi hunter. It was more than I bargained for, but I landed my first Mikiri, and all this foe would take was doing it again. Simple as that. Finally, continuing up this path led me to a really cool wall jumping section and a stunning overlook. We're not going to talk about this place beyond that. Jumping into the fire leads us to Owl, our father, evidently succumbing to a grave wound. He gave us our orders, and the fire behind us roared to proclaim my departure. Reaching my final destination, the crackle of flame confining me, and the music of Hirata shifting into a more nefarious, plotting energy. The mastermind of this attack was near. You could feel it in your bones. The air awaits. Now we can only hope for his safety. Of course, things aren't that simple. No. Fromsoft would never let it be. First, there must be GYOBU, a big, dirty bastard if there ever was one, representing the ugly problem that seemed to perpetually plague this game. Gank Squad mini-bosses. Fortunately, a fella named Nogami had my back, but I seriously can't stand this constant desire to beef up mini-boss encounters with legions of fodder present. Why? What am I supposed to learn here? What am I practicing? How to run? In the end, it doesn't even matter. GYOBU died the same way he lived, as bandit scum, forever forgotten, never to return. Who will return, though, is Inosuke, lying here, warning of dangerous illusions. What could he possibly mean? Continuing forward through a tatami mat leading into a dark corridor separated by heavy wooden doors. Met by chaos, the burning Buddha, a memory of duress. It was here we'd fight. Lady Butterfly. A veteran, skilled in the way of shinobi, immediately floating into her dance, repelling kunai and slashes as she burst towards me left to right. For Wolf, maybe this was a different, more internal struggle, but for me, it was a much different matter. The same exhaustion that I'd been battered with from ONIWA, compounding with GYOBU, and brought to a full tilt against Butterfly. I was sick of it. Absolutely sick of it. Lady continued to zip around as I exuded hot air, shouts of frustration, anguish. When will this be over? When will I have fun? When? Every cut, every backstep, every clang further annoying me. I'm patient to a fault sometimes, but even my fuse will find its end. As the fight raged on, the chippy, rigid combat came to a stop. Finally, breaking her posture, she ate my metal and poof. Gone. Then a voice. The groan which released from my lungs, booming out, shaking my house, its very foundation cracking, causing far-off mountains to rumble. How could they? As if taking me for a joke, Lady dropped down before me again, shooting magical homing projectiles and kunai in unison. Another tedious, exhausting battle commenced, where my defense only served to lengthen my suffering. Then, she snapped. A parade of little people slowly formed from smoke, but remembering Inosuke's words, I dispelled the crowd immediately. Not 40 seconds later, she snapped again, causing me to dispel another crowd. And again. Then, I was dead and called a puppy. His back, his strength, her tone. I gave up. Doing random shit in between, occupying myself with other thoughts, resigned to the belief I don't need this, believing I've nothing to learn, bought into the idea Fromsoft lost their way only 3 years after Dark Souls 3 came out. I wanted to go back. I craved to revel in the same exploits I'd already conquered, the world I already learned, leading me to reminisce on the journeys I had, remembering each step. As a matter of fact, it was while playing Sekiro that I'd begun working on Part 4 and beyond for that series. the faint crease of a smile forming across my face, a feeling I hadn't felt once in my nearly 5 hours of Sekiro. Sure, the clangs were brilliant, the blood spurts of a death blow were dazzling, and the potential combinations that a prosthetic arm could offer was invigorating. But I yearned for Dark Souls 3 the whole time I played Sekiro. Of course, I came back and tried, being stomped out so much that it reached a number I can't even count to. At points, making attempts strictly out of spite, releasing my controller, staring at my screen, and letting Wolf die because I no longer felt his pain. Sekiro was dead to me. I dropped the game for a number of days, texting my friends, blasting a hole into it, words out of spite, ripping it to shreds, seeing it as the pinnacle of garbaggio. Around this time, an out-of-town friend came to visit me. We talked about life, random shit, but he brought up a question. Can you show me Sekiro? I obliged, loading right in front of Ladies Arena, this damned hallway. Then, he asked the worst possible question he could have concocted. Could you show me a boss? I pushed back, naturally, stating, I guess, but I'd have to find an easier one because this bitch is hard. The bastard. You can guess what he said next. What? Are you scared? My thoughts, falling through endless dimensions of hellfire and woe as I internally screamed, crying to my maker for answers. But, for the homie, I'd do anything. By some strange twist of fate, I had opened up OBS and decided to record the attempt, not expecting much, but maybe a miracle. I dashed the room, each step closer reminding me of the rage that ensued before and the rage that surely ensue now. The calamity of this OST, which most attribute to the tragic conflict between a mentor and student, took on a different meaning in my mind. The remorseful violins outlining my love for Dark Souls, what I had known, as those same strings slowly slipped into a swirling descent of madness, punched by sharp percussion, repeated as a constant antagonistic memory by an echoing gong, and the deep cellos defining my friend's prying eyes. A sort of obligation setting in, one of having to succeed. I fought, silent, pulled into the screen. This duel, what felt like my first rival, the first foe I'd wanted to see burn and wither. There was no fun being had, only death being dealt. Jumping, kicking, dancing around this wench, the first phase was over. My friend was cheering, but I was locked in. Knowing I'd been here before, knowing I didn't want to be here again, one way or another. I knew her shitty tactics, her underhanded style of fighting. What never dawned on me was that I was stronger. This is just a memory. Wolf had beaten her before, but I hadn't. Confronting his past life, I was in a space that he'd already lived. I was just playing catch-up. But to this point, we'd set new memories forward. Yes, ONIWA was her sole threat, and Genichiro was next. This old hag was just a figment of my imagination. Reduced to the last of my heals, this was it. As it all wound down, she snapped. Drops of tranquility sprinkled onto my mind, the now distant echoes of screaming joy rattling in the cage atop my body. I'd won. I can move on. My eyes forever capturing the image of my blade piercing her body one last time. Those days spent ruining the sight of her, ruining the sight of this game, washed away. What I saw now was that joy. The joy people would describe after beating a powerful boss, overcoming challenge. Despite 100%ing Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3, this was something I never felt. The inevitability of failure, sure, but the passionate response of success, no. Like a wave crashing down on me, a realization settled in. The reason I talked about Dark Souls 3 throughout this video, and am discussing it now, is because I wanted to serve as a cautionary tale. I wanted Sekiro to be Dark Souls. And it wouldn't. And it shouldn't. Comparison is the thief of joy. Of course, laying things against each other is necessary. We need a range of experience and an understanding of something to fully apply an opinion to it, but take it for what it is, and judge it based on that. Sekiro is meant to be Sekiro, carrying a foreign setting, foreign art style, and foreign music. Coming to grips here, in this moment, I came to fully comprehend what Sekiro was to me. And that answer was, I don't know yet. And believing in that, confirming it within myself, drove me further to the steps of Ashina Castle. Diving right into a hurried descent, I blew across the rooftops. Confronted by extremely annoying bird people, but given the liberty to run, I of course did. Now, within the confines of the castle, my destination was unclear. Do I go towards the top or its heart? I typically prefer going bottom up because the top of things tend to symbolize the peak. This led me to strange places. A path lined by monkeys, a valley filled with spearmen that also had guns. It seemed I was somewhere wrong, but curiosity is a hell of a drug. What a devastated world this was becoming. Mysteries lying around each corner that I hadn't resolved to answer yet. Back to the castle, what awaited would meet my answers soon. But first, Jinsuke Saze. Strangely, this was the only guy I was supposed to be defensive against. Little late, pal. Crawling up the last stretch of rooftops, a cutscene commenced.
お迎えに参上いたしました。今しばらくお待ちくだされ。
なるほどな。貴様を殺しきらぬ限り、流因を我が手にはできぬよ。
Our fated rematch. Two burning ambitions, kindred spirits, one set on protecting their home, and the other protecting his very reason for being. Our swords met, my mettle being questioned by the ferocity of one set to prove themselves. Beating drums, keeping our pace, driving our rhythm, as an evenly coated layer of strings washed over the arena, favoring neither side. Where one would give an inch, another was taken, back and forth. Trumpets blaring down, a divine choir ushering forward. Destiny. Back then, I'd been unprepared, forgetting how to fight. Now, having walked through a battlefield and making it out of the other end of a literal trial by fire, I was finally ready. Delivering the first death blow, a downpour of blood gushed as Genichiro's confidence was shaken. Petty backsteps and a pretty flurry of slashes, only serving to distract. It was now him, pushed into a corner. I pressed in, not leaving room for a breath. It was my hunt.
Ashina. 主を変えるつもりはないか。
ざれ言。
ざれ言だと。このアシナを守るためならば、どのような異端の力であれ、従えてみせる。
Oh. The sinister burst of a flute welcoming this new beast. Again, a choir, but no longer did it feel focused on me. It was all on him. A divine wrath, vengeance emitting from the sky in lightning. Peril. This, again. The same hole. The fate of one who'd fight. The fate of one who'd try. Failure. Battling on, I kept my conviction close. I didn't know enough yet. If I'd beaten him then and there, why would he be atop this mountain? It was only a sign. To become better. To become stronger. As our swords clashed, a rhythm formed. This is where sound matters. And it took this long for me to notice. Each enemy has their own moveset. Yes. But where other games have you moving away from their strikes, Sekiro tells you to step in. You fall into line with the cadence of a foe, falling into a certain flow, counting your button presses, the strikes you can fit in between each breath, even becoming capable of predicting the next step, like a dance. Of course, countless attempts would come and go, but finally, what I was feeling, the most important feeling, one we seek every day, sometimes in wicked ways, through addiction, through perseverance, through complacency. Fun. Joy poured into me, eagerly running up this rooftop, ready to try again, ready to learn this dance. I'd win. I promised myself I would. Carving out my groove, I became comfortable with the controls, feeling like I wasn't just mastering inputs, it felt like I was mastering the art of battle. In a way, it was here I felt immersion, true immersion. The design of this combat bestowing upon me the gift of trial and error. Surely the same trial and error the creators went through themselves. It was at Genichiro I'd begun to believe this was a masterpiece. In a class of its own, Sekiro gave birth to the most satisfying combat ever concocted. After 15 years of searching, a contender to finally dethrone Kingdom Hearts 2. I know, I completely played this wrong, but likewise, isn't it just a little cool that I was faster than lightning? Though, before I could fully relish in this victory, behind me, something stirred.
健一郎殿、もしや落ち水を。
アシナはこの国は俺のすべてだ。そのためなら俺は人間をやめよう。
死人帰りか。
It was totally absurd, the precedent this game was setting up. I love it. I came into Sekiro full well knowing there'd be katanas, samurai in Japan, but a lightning-bending nationalist maniac wasn't on my bingo card. Genichiro ended up finishing as probably one of the best, if not the best, boss fights I've ever encountered. Up to now, I've probably beaten him over 100 times, serving as a benchmark to fully reinforce the lessons taught from the prior two bosses, ONIWA and Butterfly. One, easing you into the rhythm against peerless strength, and the other inspiring frustration to induce aggression, coalescing into a simple lesson of lead the dance, don't follow. As this chapter winds down, I displayed my resolve to continue protecting Kuro, who informed me to meet with the lord of this castle, Ishin, a seemingly tall, gaunt man, resting here, undefended as if he possessed the strength to defend his life from invaders. A farce, surely. This conversation gave me information on my next target, the Mortal Blade, hidden away on some mountain, but before departing, he offered me one bit of advice.
セキロよ、迷えば破れるぞ。
Thank you for watching. It's currently 11 p.m. and I just finished editing, and normally I prepare my thank yous well before I finish the video. It's just easier to keep my thoughts organized that way since I'm prone to rambling. But I don't really know how I could possibly convey my appreciation this time. I hope the care that I put into my work and into my words serves you justice, but I'm grateful. Not only for the monetization, I'm grateful for you sharing your own stories, entrusting those memories and spending the time digging into them just to comment them under my videos. I love stories. If this is your first video of mine, then that should be extremely obvious, but there is a power to words. A power that inspires, that wakes up emotions, and as a self-proclaimed storyteller, it is my ultimate goal to provide that. There's been nothing more fulfilling in my recent life than being able to read every last one that you've shared with me. Of course, if you want to hear more of my stories, this, that, and more, please consider subscribing, like the video, and leave a comment. I hope you have a great day, night, or evening, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.